This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I am the host of the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, a show right here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we take a deep look at individual issues and stories that are going on in the wrestling world. Each episode is about a different topic, and we take a thorough and educated look at things ranging from current booking trends to breakdowns on individual performers and angles to investigations into different fan cultures across the industry. In addition, we keep a close eye on the wrestling media, and as a professional journalist, I bring a unique perspective to how current issues in wrestling are being covered and discussed through the wrestling media. We have a revolving series of guests from across wrestling punditry joining us on each episode, and we hope that you make the choice to give us a listen on wherever you get your podcast from.
Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungee, an AEW podcast here on the Voices of Wrestling Network. I'm Fred. I'm going solo today. Mr. Tyler is off doing actual work while I'm taking a break from my actual work to do the show. Apologies for the inconsistent schedule recently. Basically, I am buried in work. It sucks. It ain't gonna get better before the end of June. So, if you are one of 3 people that like this show, apologies. It's going to be like this for a touch longer. I am working on a special treat, hopefully that works out next week. Going to keep that close to the vest just in case it doesn't work out, because I'm a coward. I figure this week we're just going to kind of do some quick hitter stuff, hit the news, going to talk briefly about the last couple episodes of Dynamite. I feel silly talking about the pay-per-view. The pay-per-view was great. Everyone knows it was great. It was widely discussed how great it was. I don't know that I really have much to add to that. Oddly, I mean, I thought it was really had tremendous depth, but I don't think it really had a true match of the year candidate on it. It had several that might appear like in the 10 spot, I guess, on a top 10 list for me. But I think by the year end, I don't know if any of them will be on my top 10. I understand other people feel more strongly about it. I also feel very silly that is apparently not good enough for me to feel like it's a no doubt 10 out of 10 show. As my cat tries to climb over stuff that she shouldn't. This has been a constant theme for the day. Corporal Cuddling is engaged. So yeah, like I think it was a fantastic show. Now part of it is that I broke it up over multiple viewings because again my schedule is hell currently. But I think that if I'd sat it down, I would have felt more strongly about it being a 10 out of 10. But I mean, it's objectively, I think. If you look at just the list of matches on it and how great those matches were, I think you'd be hard-pressed to not say it was a 10 out of 10 level show. Past couple Dynamites, I thought the first one was fine. Last week's May whatever it was. I don't know how dates or numbers work. I'm an idiot. May 27th, I thought it was perfectly fine. Very little must-see on it, if anything. I think the Mark Davis-Jack Perry match is like a low-level notebook match, 4 stars. Worth your time. But I definitely don't think there was much on it that was tremendous outside of that. Some decent promos, no matches that really stunk or anything, like no disasters. That's about it for that show. As far as this week's Dynamite, June 3rd, I thought it was bookmarked by a couple very strong matches, and honestly had a couple other very good ones in between. Roosh MJF, I thought was a 4.25 star level match. Really great work there. Roosh stepped up in a big spot, and MJF, say what you will about his creative at points, and God knows I have. I think he is a tremendous in-ring worker, and I think it's kind of hard to not admit that, at least. And I thought he showed it here. And I thought Mark Davis-Will Ospreay was a really strong kind of schmoz main event. Now, this isn't going to go down as like a Matt Classic, and a bunch of people freaked out when in the Observer this week at the end, Dave did give it 5 3/4 stars, which sounds completely insane to me, but then I reached out to Dave, that's how crazy it sounded, and clarified that that was a typo. I don't know if the proper rating is 4 3/4, which is, within the realm possibility. I think that's not insane to give it. But I also get if you didn't like the match because it was a lot of interference. And I mean, it was, I personally am of the opinion that every once in a while you can do an Attitude Era style, like Run and Fest as a treat. I definitely wouldn't want that like on a weekly basis. But I don't think they've done that in a long time, so it's all right. So it didn't bother me. I thought the work was strong in between, and that the run-ins were fun. I enjoyed it, but again, I'm not going to quibble with anyone that didn't. So, put down 4.5 for that. I thought the Bayley night match was, again, a low-level notebook match, 4 stars. I would be disappointed if that is the blow-off of that storyline. Now, I don't know if they're going to do, like, pull out Joe Lanza's favorite reference here, Rick Martel, Tito Santana, where they hate each other for the rest of their lives. So, hey, look, that would be pretty cool. But I do hope that is not, like, the entirety of the storyline. That it's not just, Kevin Knight beat Mike Bailey on the Dynamite, and that's it. That's over. Mike Bailey is in the mid-card for the rest of his life, and Kevin Knight is moving on up. I think that would be a disservice, frankly, to Mike Bailey. He's a fantastic worker. I don't know. He's been a great promo. He's been all right the past few weeks, I feel like. Doing all right. But, yeah, I mean, maybe that's like the cap of his promo abilities. But, I still think he's good enough that he should be a regular presence on TV and, like, something of a player at a minimum. A good TNT level champion. Mercedes Moné returned in a pretty good match against Alex Windsor. I feel like it was a touch short. It maybe left some stuff on the table, but still was a good match. As the cat jumps on me again. This is the second time, in case you're keeping track. Yeah, I thought Mercedes looked nice, and so did Windsor. I thought they both had put on good performances, and it was a best women's match they've had on TV in a few weeks, I think, at least. Unless I'm forgetting something, which is entirely possible. Leo Rush, stop it. Not doing this. I don't want this. I don't know who needs this. This is one of those things that's gonna, I think, look better in GIF form, and people will like retweet and be like, this is storytelling or whatever. But in actuality, like, I think it sucks. And I'm a Leo Rush fan. I think he's a fantastic worker. I think he's tremendously athletic and really impressive in how he uses that athleticism. And I mean, you can still see that in this gimmick. Like when he's doing for lack of a better term, I don't know how else to describe it, the bucking horse run around the ring, like that's hard to do. It's really, physically challenging, I'd have to think, to be able to do that and make it not look like crap. And I think he does that, and, that's cool, but like the gimmick as a whole is just very kind of cringy. I don't know. Had to kick the cat out. Had enough of that nonsense. Yeah, I like this week's episode of Dynamite quite a bit. I thought it was a really good show. No thoughts on Collision because I have not watched it. Sorry. Out of time. Beep boop. I just saw... Sorry, I got distracted by a tweet which contained the text, "A Chinese robot wearing a clown wig kicked a child in the stomach." If that's not going to make you stop whatever you're doing, I don't know what will. All right. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the episodes of Dynamite that have taken place the last couple weeks. Very excited that they're going to run Cincinnati, a place I could ostensibly go to, but don't have time to. Hooray me. Let's see. Okay, let's get on to the actual news about AEW. I think the bigger story maybe is that WWE is planning on running Arena Ciudad in Mexico City right before, I think it's the week before the Anniversario show for CMLL, and the same day they're also running NXT Great American Bash head to head with Forbidden Door, because that worked great last time. I don't know why they're bothering with that. Now maybe they will do something with the running the AAA show. It's the Triple Mania. Maybe they'll accomplish something against Anniversario, because God knows they've got the knives out in Mexico now for CMLL. Because God forbid anything isn't just globalized. Anyways. But I don't know that they're going to actually accomplish what they want to with this, with running head to head against Great American Bash, or with Great American Bash against Forbidden Door, because last year it failed. Now maybe with it not being I think it was All In last year, with it not being the big Texas show, maybe it being a smaller show, it'll have a little bit more of an effect, but I'm really doubtful on that. And I just think they're doing a disservice to their customers, those who would be interested in watching both. And not everyone's going to choose WWE in that scenario. So it just feels like, it just feels really unnecessary and not beneficial even to them. So I don't get it, but that is the traditional thinking of you got to run opposition and just hurt the other people, because, if you're doing that, then you're definitely helping yourself. Business genius. Scrolling past that in the Observer, just seeing if there's any other news stories. Grand Slam Mexico has been announced for August 5th in Arena Mexico. The ad apparently lists MJF, Místico, Bandido, Mascara Dorada, Andrade, and Thunder Rosa. So, that should be a fun show. Mick Foley, of course, debuted with the company. I swear to God, if they have him wrestle, I will not be happy, and I'll leave it like that. It is very unfortunate that's even like a thing he's talking about, considering that several years ago he talked about how he couldn't even ride roller coasters anymore because he was just getting concussions from that, which is insane. Like, that's really not good. So buddy, don't get in the ring. MJF hyperextended his knee in the Roosh match, so he's had to cancel a indie date where he's going to wrestle Bobby Orlando at Beyond Wrestling on 6/5. So doesn't seem to be any like serious structural damage from the reporting early, so hopefully. So it would be good to not have that title reign ruined by injury. The Butcher and the Blade's contracts have expired. It appears they're out of the company. It's in the sense that it's sad to see them go. I think they're both good performers. I've lost track of the Blade's recovery from injury. I'm not sure if he's been able to return yet or not. So when you hear this obnoxious typing in the background, that's what that is. I thought he was, I like that tag team pretty well as like a mid-card kind of tag team, doing good work. But they're both in their 40s. They're older. The Blade is back. Good for him. But, I'd love for them to get featured somewhere. I think they're a nice tag team. But, I can't really take umbrage with the decision to let them go. Frankly, I'm not sure where they would fit in, like Ring of Honor level, I guess, if you're really trying to make that a second promotion, which AEW arguably mostly is not. I guess they've been showing a few signs closer to that. But still, that also should really be intended to help people, develop. And these guys are late stage, I think Blade's 46 and Butcher's 48, it looks like. But I always like the Butcher's work. In particular, like, the Blade's a good worker. I don't want to knock him or anything, but I thought the Butcher was always very cool whenever he showed up on TV. So, there is a fundraiser shirt for Tanya Brooks, aka Rebel. AEW selling it. All money, all proceeds or profits. I think it is technically profits. It should be proceeds, guys. You got it big enough. Should go toward, or are going towards, ALS research, I believe it is. So it's a great cause. Wishing her the best. I think that's about it for AEW news from this week. So just a little quick bit of quick hitters there. Interested to see what they're going to do as a main event for the next pay-per-view. It is Forbidden Door, so traditionally, previous years I should say, not 2025, but previous points, it was a inter-promotion show with an inter-promotion challenger, but they've really kind of moved away from that the past couple years. Frankly, it's been a couple years. What the hell am I talking about? So I just assume it's going to be someone. It feels like they might be setting up for like a multi-man a 3 or 4, a triple threat, 3-way dance or 4 corners match for this pay-per-view, teasing Mark Briscoe and Andrade and so on. Would be a way to kind of get past multiple challengers on, while also, kind of passing the time until assumedly Will Ospreay gets the title shot in Wembley. But yeah, I personally just love another MJF Briscoe match. But I mean, Andrade's been on a tear, and it's really hard to fault his investment or placement in a title match. So I don't know. I prefer it to not be a multi-man, but I feel like it's headed that way. Is by dumb read. Mark Davis, man, has been fantastic this year. I just got to say that. I've really been impressed with his work. The pile driver is my pick for move of the year. I'm going to actually have to try to campaign for that, so we don't just go with like the same, the neon double jump moonsault's cool and so on. But like, we got the Mark Davis pile driver is just so cool every single time. It looks like he's just killing dudes with it. It rules. I don't know how you can not love that move. All right, let's talk about 2 lists, and then I'm going to get out of here. First one is Voices of Wrestling's 30 Under 30 list, one of my favorite projects every year. We voted on it again, and it's come out, was announced this past week, with Saya Kamatani finishing first, which I think is honestly the best pick, frankly, from the available candidates. So she's done good work. I mean, I'm not going to say she's like Mayu Iwatani level work or anything like that, but I think she's a very good worker, a great one even. And she's obviously a tremendous draw and business mover over there. Like, everyone in Japan is seemingly in, if not outright free fall, but they've been hurt the last couple of years. The yen is down, the economy over there is not great, and she, most of the promotions seem to be declining a bit in attendance, and Kamatani has started them on the ups, and that is impressive to be doing that in that atmosphere, in that environment. So I feel like she's a clear-cut number one. The rest of the actual top 10, and then I'll talk about my votes. Scroll. Kyle Fletcher 2, Callum Newman 3, Yuma Anzai 4, Kevin Knight 5, Mascara Dorada 6, Miyu Watanabe 7, Starlight Kid 8, number 9 is Azumi, and then finally Jackie Kamei at 10. I feel like that's about as good of a top 10 as you can manage, really. I don't see any... First of all, I definitely don't see anyone in that top 10 that is not deserving of recognition. I apparently... I had Kamei on my ballot. I had him 7th. What am I talking about? I feel like that's a really reasonable top 10. I can't... And apparently the voting was very close. The top 3 were separated by just a couple points. And, I mean, it's a good top 10. I do have a quibble with it in that I think WWE being completely out of the top 30 is flawed, in that you've got Rhea Ripley, Braun Breaker, and Siobhan Evans, who I all think should have been in the top 30. When I voted, I had Ripley 9th, I had Breaker 13th, and I had Evans 25th. I think those 3 are obviously what you should be looking for in this list. Now, I'm not going to be upset about it, because God knows that every other list in existence pretty much bends over backwards to talk about how great WWE is. And if you're like listening to this somehow and you are upset that WWE didn't get the recognition they needed, and it's because you think there's like an anti-WWE thing going on or whatever, I mean, I think I disagree, because voters are only going to vote on what they watch, and a chunk of the voter base doesn't watch WWE, which is fair enough. I can't fault anyone for that. I only airdrop in for the parachute in. I'm really good at this podcasting thing, guys. You're making great decisions listening to me. I only parachute in to see, like, recommended matches, essentially. I can't sit through a whole episode of Raw. I remember trying to watch the Netflix debut episode with Warren Hayes, and after like 2 hours, I was like, all right, I'm out. I can't do this. So yeah, it's not really a promotion that I'm terribly interested in. But Rhea Ripley and Braun Breaker and Javon Evans are three special talents, and I will defend them, and I think they should have been clear top 30 people. I'm not saying that, like, they should have finished 1, 2, 3, like anything like that. That's insane. I do think it's fair to criticize WWE and mainly the output of at least Breaker and Ripley over the past year in terms of good matches, because WWE is a promotion that doesn't care about match quality, and they don't care about having their people wrestle a lot. They actively try to avoid that, and so, if you're like counting notebook matches in 2025 or 2026, there's not going to be a lot for those guys just because of how their promotion is. Now, you can say you should adjust for that, and I guess that'd be a fair way to do things, but I think it's fair to just say, well, if you want to be considered a great wrestler, you should have great matches. You should have those on a regular basis, and Breaker and Ripley aren't, and Evans, I think we're already seeing him disappear a little bit, just in terms of, like, because it felt like he was having great matches regularly for a while there, and it feels like now he's main roster, and they're like, oh, we don't wrestle here. So I think that is a problem there. Not a problem, but like a reason why they didn't make the top 30. I will say that I think they're all no doubters, though, for me. I mean, Ripley is a high-level name in the biggest company in the world. When she is given the opportunity to wrestle with someone that's not like Jade Cargill, she puts on great matches. She has in the past. The Io Sky tag team had some very strong matches not too long ago. And, it's not like her popularity or push has decreased. She hasn't fallen down the card. She's still, like, one of the top women in that company, one of the top names, period, in that company. I think that is, that should be enough to get her a top 30 spot, along with, when you factor in, like, she's a good worker and, she's over and all this. I thought it's clear that she should be on the list. Now, she's also in, this company that doesn't like to have good matches, and so that's part of it. Braun Breaker, I think, is undoubtedly a great worker. I've had this conversation with Mike Spears before of Open the Voice Gate, and he'll say stuff like, I think his argument is basically that Breaker, he doesn't think he would excel in Dragon Gate, and so he doesn't vote for him, because he thinks he's like a system quarterback, is the term he likes to use. I undoubtedly think there would be an adjustment period if Breaker were to leave WWE to go to, I don't think AEW would be an issue, but, like, more puro, like, kind of, like Dragon Gate. We'll stick with Dragon Gate in this example. I think there'd be an adjustment period where he would struggle, but you can't convince me that he would not be as good, if not better, than Gianni Volante, and I know that Mike and Case have gushed over Volante's 2025, since he's a part-timer with Dragon Gate. I mean, Breaker is a tremendous athlete. He's a borderline, he barely missed the NFL, essentially. Then he went to WWE because he's the son of Scott Steiner. Let's not get into how stupid it is that he's not Braun Steiner, but, that's another conversation. He did, he got overexposed a bit early in NXT when he came in. I think that kind of, he didn't look his best there, but it was about the time that he was tag teaming with Baron Corbin, of all people. I can't believe that. It's very funny that the Baron Corbin act is what, like, really got him as a, like I feel like was his breakthrough. So I really have a hard time believing that he would not work well in any promotion in the world. There's going to be a grace period. Like, if you're taking him straight from WWE main roster to Dragon Gate, like, I could see him having a month or 3 months or whatever that would be difficult as an adjustment. But I think that, after a little bit, he'd adjust, and I mean, he's fast, he's strong, he puts on good matches. I think that he would do well, and I can't really buy into the system quarterback thing. And Javon Evans, I mean, he's tremendously athletic. He's going to be a great in-ring worker. I don't have a tremendous feel for like how he's going to do personality-wise. I do think there's, I wrote about this, I think, in the blurb for Javon. I think there's concerns about his long-term in WWE just because he isn't the traditional WWE, like, oh, big guy, main eventer. No, maybe they think he's, they recognize him as good enough to overcome that, to be pushed despite being somewhat smaller and, outside of the typical WWE mold. But I do think there's concern there that he's going to end up lost in the shuffle. I guess we'll see going forward. To me, it would not be a lack of ability. It'd just be a lack of, like, getting kind of slotted like, I don't know, Tyler Bate or Chad Gable or, at one point Dolph Ziggler or, Evan Bourne, to go back even further, like these guys that are work rate guys, but just get kind of passed over for one reason or another. And I think that's a legitimate concern with Javon. But he should be a star, but I feel like it's a less clear cut path to stardom in WWE for him than Breaker, who is already like a borderline main eventer at points, I think. I assume the Vision has suffered another injury at some point. It's hard to keep track of who's gone out from that group. But yeah, outside of that, outside of those quibbles, 3 guys I think should have been in the top 30. I think this is a fantastic list. I really like it. I have no problem with anyone that's mentioned in it. I think all the names listed are good. I think it's a great list, really. I'm proud of the work that they did, and I think it's worth checking out. And, there's a very, very, very long honorable mention page. If you want to check out literally anyone who got a single vote, you can take a look at them and, read a little bit about almost all of them. There's a couple, I think, without blurbs, and be like, oh, okay, that person sounds interesting. I should check them out. And I think that's, that's really the funnest part of a project like this is being, made aware of people you don't know about, and having, being curious about wrestling or anything in life. But, this is a wrestling podcast. Being curious about wrestling is a laudable thing. And I think that you should be like that. You should be not just, like accepting that, what you do or don't like in a major promotion like AEW, but you should be curious about what's going on at the next level down and then down from there, as much as you can. But I just think that's a fun way to go about it. So I just think it's a lot more rewarding than just, oh, I like who's in the AEW main event scene or, the WWE main event scene or whatever. Like, those people are good usually, but, there's other things out there and they're worth your time. And I think that's about it I have for 30 for 30. GWE, greatest wrestler ever. That's concluded after all the hard work by Grimace over on the Pro Wrestling Only board and Discord. Terry Funk 1, Bryan Danielson 2nd, Kenta Kobashi 3. Top 10s are rounded out by Ric Flair, Steve Austin, Genichiro Tenryu, Stan Hansen, Rey Mysterio Jr., Bret Hart, and Mitsuhara Misawa. I think it's a very fair top 10. I mean, you can argue about like little things about placement, but I think that's a tremendously strong top 10. I would have liked to have seen like, Joshi representative up there, maybe Aja Kong, who was 11th, Akira Hokuto was 16th. But, it's not far off. It's not that many points, so it's not a big deal. It's a pretty narrow gap between 10 and 11 there. I think the real value in these projects is, it's always fun to get people with different points of view together to talk about something like this and to advocate on behalf of their favorites and be like, hey, this is why I think blah, blah, blah is great. And using that as a opportunity to, again, to have curiosity about wrestling, about its history, about what footage is out there, and evaluating and seeing if you do like something, if you like shoot style and you haven't watched it before. Again, my schedule has been a nightmare, but I've dug into a little bit of Marika Yoshida after she finished, I think top 100. I think that's where I saw her. 102nd. Yeah, I pulled her up, and I watched a couple matches of hers, and I'm going to have to watch more because she kicked ass in those matches. someone I hadn't watched before, from the 90s Joshi I hadn't really heard all that much about. So, that kind of stuff, pull up the list, go through it, start at number 1 and then scrolling down until you find a name you don't recognize or you haven't watched that much of, and then just watch them and learn. And I saw someone, I forget who it was, and I'm not really using this to like call them out or whatever, but I'm just trying to make a response to a point they made. I think someone suggested that like people are mad about the possibility of like Jerry Lawler finishing a spot above Kenny Omega. And I think if you're mad about that, you need to chill out, frankly. But the PWO people are big fans of Jerry Lawler, and like, having watched a couple prime Lawler performances, I get it. He's a really special performer. He's a great babyface, and he's great in that kind of Memphis style match. That's not going to be for everyone, but at the same time, Kenny Omega's not going to be for everyone. And it's fair to watch these guys and gals and to just draw your own conclusion. I think that's a real value in it, and I think that's what you should be doing. There's nothing on here that really made me angry, with one exception. And the one thing that did make me kind of annoyed, biffed, in the voting process was when people would vote for stuff like Yoshihiko and Andre's a Giant Panda and so on. Kin the Box, I think someone tried to vote for but wasn't nominated. Look, I get enjoying those matches. I'm not going to pretend like I haven't enjoyed anything involving them or like Makamami or whatever. But I think it's very silly in a list of the 100 greatest wrestlers to be voting for not people, or at least, like gimmicks that aren't necessarily assigned to one person or aren't like, it's a little different than, it's very different from like Mystico is the guy under the mask, and he wrestles with the mask, but we all know who Mystico is. And it's very silly to try to compare that to like, this is the person wearing inflatable panda costume, so I feel like that's kind of undue. There's a lot of discourse about stuff like someone voted Lulu Pencil second, and I saw Andy Kaufman got a top 25 vote. I thought the Lulu Pencil stuff during the pandemic was fun, kind of a high watermark for early pandemic stuff. I think they told a very good story, but at the same time, I don't think it's that hard to evaluate Lulu Pencil and be like, she's really not a good wrestler. The person's justification was that they got really invested in the storyline of Lulu Pencil, and she made them feel a certain way about wrestling, like, very invested, I guess, basically. Sorry, repeat myself for the first time, I'm sure. But that they, and that's why they voted her that high. I understand. I just think it's very silly to look at this list, and come up with all these different names, and it doesn't matter what style or styles you're partial to, but whatever you're into as a wrestling fan, and to look up and down this list, and like in one 5-person slot have Antonio Inoki, Akira Taue, John Cena, Nick Bockwinkel, and Chigusa Nagayo, and to conclude that actually the best wrestler of all time is Lulu Pencil. I do think that's pretty silly. And same with Andy Kaufman. I think Andy Kaufman, did some fun stuff and all this, but I also think it's a little silly to evaluate him and as superior to, pull any name off the, whoever they voted above. I forget who it was that voted for him, but like, saying, and that's why he's better than Katsuyori Shibata or Keiji Muto or Io Shirai. Like, I just think it's a little silly that way to go about it. I know he was a tremendous troll, doing his women's champion of the world shtick and all that, and the I'm Hollywood, Memphis sucks stuff. But I just think it's that's not how I would have cast my ballot. I don't really agree with that evaluation, but again, as I said before, I'll say it again. I think the fun thing is being able to see all these different people's opinions and votes, and including the tribal chief of Rhode Island. If you know, you know. Yeah, it's just a fun little project. A couple fun projects. Just use them to broaden your horizons and have some fun with wrestling. That's kind of my big thought opinion. I speak real good. Fire me into the sun. That's just my big takeaway on those projects. Anyways, that's all I've got to talk about this week. I hope you all are having a great week. Look forward to talking with you the next time I can. But until then, take care, y'all. Have a good one. Be good. Talk to you later.
Hi, I'm Andrew Rich, and if you're like me, you look at the state of modern wrestling discourse and think, wow, what a cesspool. That's why I'm here to tell you about Music of the Mat Remix. That's right, your favorite wrestling music podcast is back with a new format, where I bring on a guest and we play songs related to wrestling-themed topics. It could be a wrestling reference, a wrestling concept, a wrestling pun, things of that nature. Now you might be saying, Andrew, that is a very, very tenuous connection to pro wrestling on a wrestling podcast network. Is this just an excuse to hang out with your friends and talk about music and ignore the rest of the wrestling landscape? Yes. Yes, it is. So listen to Music of the Mat Remix on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, available on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast player of choice.